To Romano, a patron of the arts. They are rare in these days. From his friend, Ernest Hemingway. Bourdain, 11th of November, 1945.
24 bound volumes in the life of a restaurant.
Volumes of guest books from when they first opened, signed Matisse and Miro.
Maria Callas, Enrico Fermi.
Artists, statesmen, authors, musicians.
So here's some music. Somebody wrote a little ditty.
Scribbled drawings, expressions of gratitude, poetry, and prose.
La passione, con amore.
Philip of Habsburg came and had the rice and loved the rice and said, I'll have more, please. And he said, I'm not going to give you any more. I want you to come back.
What is it about this place on the fairly remote, isolated outer island of Bourdain? Traditionally an island of fishermen, row after row of bright pastel-colored houses so the fishermen could see them back in the day when returning from sea. The women of the island were once master lace makers. Today, not so much. But what is left is well worth a 45-minute boat ride to this tiny island, or at least that's what Lori De Mori says. She's an American cookbook author and food writer who's been living in Italy for decades. There are two principal groups who come to Bourdain, those shopping for the famous lace, and people like me and Lori who are looking for one thing, a perfected dish that can be found at this place, Da Romano.
Local painters had started out with elected this place, this was their hangout, this was the place they came to. And then, the way it goes, then visiting artists find out that that's where all the artists go, and then suddenly that's where everybody's going.
From the 1800s, 5 generations of a single family have run this place, handing down recipes from parents to children, never deviating from simple, good things. The walls are covered with the work of long-dead admirers, and their signatures fill the guest book. But life and cooking go on. Hemingway and Matisse and Miro are gone, but Keith Richards comes straight here when in Venice. Keith Richards, he's right about everything. 4th-generation proprietor Luigi Seno.
Tony, you'll like this. He says this is heroic cooking. A lot of people who don't know much about traveling in a certain way, they want to have spaghetti and meatballs. And actually, he says to stay steadfast and say, you know what, this is good enough. It's not only good enough, it's perfect. And we're not changing, is heroic.
Does he agree? Does he feel a compulsion to innovate?
No. Io penso che sia la giusta strada.
The 5th generation, his son Luca.
He's for simplicity, and he thinks that this tradition is the
What if
right
a bunch
road.
of really hot girls start showing up here every night? It's like Sex in the City, but younger and hotter, and they all want Cosmos.
Le faccio accomodare, le do da bere, no?
He says he thinks he can make them stay even if he keeps offering the same thing they've been offering for the last 100 years.
That would include stuff like this assortment from the lagoon: cuttlefish roe, sea snails, baby octopus, and manus shrimp, all cooked in the only restaurant kitchen in Venice allowed to still use a wood fire.
It's a lot of work.
Wood has to be brought.
Bring in the wood. It's also bloody hot in there. It's summertime, and they've still got this thing raging. And a lot of people say to them, like, why on earth would you do it? And the flavor is not the same. Yeah. And this is something that you're going to probably see. È un piatto molto tipico di
Polenta, grilled polenta?
grilled polenta, white.
Polenta is a fundamental staple of Venetian cuisine. Usually, but not always, white cornmeal. Usually, but not always, grilled.
And then the sardine is cooked in vinegar. And so you have this sort of sweetness from the onion and the vinegar, which preserves it.
That's delicious. One of my favorite fish, by the way.
Sardine?
Yes.
A lot of flavor for your money, no?
But really, if there's one dish worth crossing the lagoon for, if not half the world, it's this. It's a dish that all alone makes Venice, and Bourdain in particular, a place you just have to visit. Go risotto.
fish risotto. We used to be a bit coddled and cuddled and caressed in order to behave.
In the brilliant film Big Night, there's a painful moment where an ignorant customer looks at an authentic, perfectly prepared order of seafood risotto and complains, "It's rice." And yes, Go risotto is rice. But what rice?
So this is what we're having, which they're really famous for.
Questa proprio è la classica ricetta dei pescatori.
So this is a real classic fisherman's
Nel
recipe
primo Novecento.
of the early 1900s, made with this fish called go. Go is not a prized fish. It's one of those fish that burrow down, ugly little fat fish, a lot of bones, so it's not a fish you'd want to eat as a fish, but it's a fish you'd want to use for flavor. So they make this broth out of it. They have to simmer it really, really gently because if they break it up, it lets out this black, bitter, and it really isn't nice. The way they handle the broth, it's like, don't disturb the little fish.
E la passione. Con amore.
Simmer the broth, in goes the rice. Mix it, and that's all that happens, is they keep adding the broth.
An amazing confluence of physical forces of the universe come together into a substance that can only be described as otherworldly.
And that just goes slowly, slowly, slowly.
The fats and essences of a fish, the textural magic of arboreal rice, a miracle of gradual absorption.
And then to mantecare, they're trying to make it creamy without adding cream.
A kind of alchemy, movement-altering texture, texture-enhancing flavor.
Sort of hits the pan and flips the rice so it's creamy.
There is risotto, and then there is great risotto. And then, once in a very, very long time, there is truly great risotto.
It's just that go. It's just the broth. It better really be good or there's nothing else.
This is what they mean when they say truly great. And I guess 2 centuries of artists recognize that too.
It looks so plain. It's just white. Right. And then you taste it. It's like the distilled essence of the Adriatic. It's absolutely full of flavor.
Oh, man, that's beautiful. This is absolutely fantastic, by the way. The flavor is superb.
And look at how these are like little pearls. They're definitely all keeping their own personality.
I absolutely agree to heroic cooking.
Alla cucina eroica.